Welcome into the Tuesday Night Football Show presented by Fire and Vine. My name's Jacob Vinson, joined by Noah McKay. We're going to recap all of Week 8's action. Get you ready for all of Week 9's action upcoming. That's right. We're almost pretty much done with the regular season. Just 3 more weeks to go in the regular season. Of course, we'll go through so much more. We'll go through where Noah was wrong, where he was right. And we're going to get into a little bit of Upper Cumberland Mr. Football contenders, some guys that we have our eyes on, and something that we're looking forward to. Once again, this is the Tuesday Night Football Show right here on the rooftop at Fire and Vine. It's cold outside. It's not cold on here on the rooftop. They've got heaters right above us. They've got heaters out there on the, the patio area as well. And so you can still come out here, get you some great food. And obviously you can eat inside if you want to, but you can still sit out here on the rooftop with us. And it is a good time. So once again, before we get into all of it, we want to also give a shout out to all of our all-inclusive sponsors for making everything that we do here at UCR possible. Of course, the Real Estate Collective, Tee Up in Baxter, Sonia Brown with American Way Real Estate, Club Wyndham, the Watson Chevy, as this is the UCR Media Network presented by Watson Chevy, Quality Family, Domino's, Nelson Trophy and Screen Printing right here at Fire and Vine, the Crouch Team with Highlands Elite Real Estate, Aminette's Eagle Auction and Realty, Hall Sports and Outdoors, and Hall Family Pharmacy, and Swallows Insurance. We appreciate all of our all-inclusive sponsors for making everything that we do here at UCR possible. Noah, we're here.
We're here.
Week 9 of the high school football season.
It's 3 weeks to go in the regular season. We've passed the midway point all the way to the state championship game. We are here, still fall break for a lot of people. Nearly everybody in the Upper Cumberland, I think everybody may be on fall break this week between the 2-week fall breaks that we have, which makes things interesting for some of these schools, and then the teams that or schools that just went on fall break. So a limited slate, just like it was for us last week with 3 games that we're live streaming. But it's going to be a fun slate. If you're on a beach, you're warmer than we are here.
Well, I don't know.
It's maybe. Well, not actually here on the rooftop, but outside. It got cold all of a sudden. But regardless, we're here, and now we're talking Mr. Football. We're talking postseason awards. We're talking about region standings. So a lot to get into tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. You got to help us out, though. Hit that share button. Share it along with us. We're going live at 6:30. We've been doing this past few weeks because, quite frankly, we're ready to go. And we're excited to talk. So let's do it. We're going to have some fun tonight.
All right, we always start where Noah was wrong, where he was right. Noah, where were you wrong last week?
Hey, listen, and this wasn't just me. This was all of us. York and Stone Memorial, swing and a miss. We all picked Stone Memorial. York with a very impressive showing. Now, we all picked Stone, but none of us picked it to be a blowout. There's sometimes, very rarely, will all of us pick a blowout and then the inverse result happens. So not the most stunning result in the world for York to go on the road and get that win. They're playing great football. We're going to talk about it, but we all whiffed on it. Cumberland County kind of just glossed over DeKalb County. Cumberland County, DeKalb County, they get back rolling. Ooh, that was upset alert city. So we were right on the game, but very wrong on how it would go. So those were the two that kind of leapt out to me where got to eat that one. York, I'm sorry. We all picked against you, and we were absolutely wrong about it.
I picked a 1-point game. I'm still okay with that, going with the home team. But, the Dragons got the job done. Cumberland County, they had a chance late in that game. They were driving, had it down on DeKalb County's 16-yard line on 4th down, could not convert. Otherwise, they would have had a chance to either tie or maybe win the ball game with a 2-point conversion. Where you were right last week.
Smith County ain't dead yet. I told you, this season starts for Smith County with last week's game against Jackson County. They are back alive. They have 2 region wins. They have a clear path to the playoffs with a huge opportunity against Westmoreland to jump into the upper echelon of this region to potentially force a 3-way tie for first in this region with a win over Westmoreland. And that's a lot easier said than done with how that Eagles team is playing. But Smith County ain't dead yet. They were the best 1-6 team in the state by a mile. They showed it. It was tight for a while. Jackson County came in with a good game plan. 7-7, I believe it was, at halftime of that game. But ultimately, too much firepower for Smith County. They get a multi-possession victory. A nice win for the Owls, and I will repeat it. Smith County ain't dead yet.
We'll get into that just a little bit more coming up in a little bit. They won that game 35-14. All right, that's where Noah was wrong, where he was right. That's what we start the show off with every week. Once again, the Tuesday Night Football Show presented by Fire and Vine right here on the rooftop of Fire and Vine. We always do the UC Top 5, and little bit of movement. Not a whole lot, but a little bit of movement here on the UC Top 5 this week.
There's some major movement down there. There's a newcomer for the first time in a long time on this list, and a newcomer the entire year. I think this is team number 7 that's made their way. So I think it's 7 that's made its way onto the list. So let's start top to bottom, though, because there's not a whole lot of intrigue at the top, and then we'll get to where a lot of the intrigue happens at the bottom of the top 5.
Teams 1 through 4 are not changing. 2 of these teams were on bye. Upperman and Cookeville, they're staying at 1 and 2. They were on a bye last week. White County and Macon County, they hold serve, both winning last week. And a pretty big win for White County without Trip Pinion, beating CAK on the road 28-7. Macon County absolutely dominating Livingston Academy 45-6. Both of those teams 6 and 2. They have the head-to-head, and White County won that football game. Number 5 for the first time this season in the UC Top 5, the Clay County Bulldogs. You mentioned it last week. Keep an eye on these Bulldogs. 5 and 2. They were on a bye last week, but a big reason why they are at this number 5 spot, they have the head-to-head against York Institute, who beat Stone Memorial, who was our number 5 team last week.
Yeah, so York Institute there at the honorable mention 6 spot.
Pretty much right there.
It was a discussion. Yeah. And head-to-head in football is king, especially when it's a fairly decisive result. It was a good football game.
Of course, it's week 1.
Without question, that was kind of the discussion about it. Is a week 1 result, if they face each other tomorrow, does the game look different? I'm certain the game looks different. Yeah. I'm not sure if the result is different or not, because I think both teams are better than they were in week 1. But when you have a head-to-head result like that, it pretty much trumps all. It's why Macon County finds themselves still behind Sparta. Sparta got that head-to-head win. They stay a spot ahead. So while York has a top 5 resume, I believe, to this point in this season, one of their blemishes is a loss to Clay County. Now let's talk about Clay County, because this is a team that is egregiously unranked in the Tennessee Sports Writers Association poll. It's a team that could absolutely make the state championship game in 1A, and that is unranked. And I've said my piece to those guys about it, and I have the emails to prove it. But I really like this Clay County team. You talk about their resume so far. They had the win over York. They've taken care of business in pretty convincing fashion against the teams they were supposed to beat in convincing fashion. And what are their 2 losses? A Portland team that's a 5A school for a single A team by 3 points, and Westmoreland by 3 points. And at the time,
very good
we all went, whoa. No, Westmoreland hasn't lost since. And
they're one of the top teams in 2A.
Yeah, Westmoreland could maybe play for the state championship in 2A. It's going to probably come down to the 3rd round between them and East Robb for the right to go to York and for the right to go to the state championship game. So not a bad loss either way, both by only 3 points. I love this Clay County team. We're going to talk about them a little bit more here in the Mr. Football candidates, because they absolutely have one at their quarterback position. And I love Bruce Lamb. You know they're going to come with their hard hats on, but they have the ability to be explosive through the air, and I mean explosive through the air. So I don't know if 8 years ago you would have thought you were saying a Bruce Lamb team outside the Will McDonald years is going to be an air raid offense, but they are. And they're going to do whatever it takes to win. They deserve to be on the list. Welcome to the UC Top 5, Clay County.
And that does mean York Institute at that honorable mention, the 6th spot, I guess you could say. And obviously right there, it was a real conversation between York Institute and Clay County. It's just the head-to-head. It was that kind of won it over for the Clay County Bulldogs. So once again, our UC Top 5 honorable mention, the York Institute Dragons, after their win against Stone Memorial 27-21. Stone was our number 5 team last week. Clay County into the UC Top 5 for the first time this season. They were on a bye last week, but again, they have the head-to-head against York. They're 5-2 on the year. Macon County 6-2 beats Livingston Academy 45-6 at number 4. White County at number 3 at 6-2 on the year. They beat CAK on the road 28-7, and then Cookeville and Upperman 6-1 Cavaliers. Upperman at 7-0, our only undefeated team still so far.
Yeah, and I think to wrap it up on that, 1 is not going to change until December. 2 through 7 could change given these results. A big couple of weeks coming up for Cookeville, Lincoln County, and then a massive one at Green Hill next week for them. White County, the question of Trip Pinion, didn't play against CAK. They're on the bye week. What happens next week when they face DeKalb County? Macon County sure looks like they may be putting it all together at the right time. They're not going to get tested. I think they get Watertown.
Yep.
They're going to win by 1,000. They won't get tested till the last week of the regular season when they travel to Stone, a game that seems to be forming into a game with a ton of moving parts. Winning that game may not be the best case scenario for those two teams. We could, being the 4 may be better than being the 3 out of Region 4-4A.
Might get into some basketball conversations with that final football.
They're not. Yeah, whoever loses, everyone's going to decide they threw the game. They aren't going to, but still, being the 4 means you get to go to Loudon in first round, which isn't great. But then you don't have to go to Baxter in the second, which is ideal. But all that to say, I think 2 through 7. we could have some movement in there in the last 3 weeks of the season. It is very much not as entrenched as we felt it was early on in the regular season.
So there's our UC Top 5. We'll let you know where Noah was right and where he was wrong. And one new thing that we're going to do this week is our UC Mr. Football Contenders. We went through all the classes, all of our teams that we have in the Upper Cumberland region, and put down a list of guys that we think could have their names called both as semifinalists and as finalists at the end of the year. It's a very, very loaded list. We've got one player from 1A. We have, 6 players from Region 4. 4A. And we'll go through all of them.
So I do want to say this because I know how everybody gets. Mr. Football for me is kind of like talk about the Hall of Fame in the NFL. And I'm like, if we have to have a discussion about it, it's not it. And so we got to remember, this is – and if UCR does a ballot, you guys handle that now because the way they do it is a joke. It's a total joke. And so we could tell you who Mr. Football is and be right. The shadow committee will probably get it wrong. They don't always, but they'll probably get it wrong. I don't know what they do in the back room. Who cares? But for me, this is if we're talking about Mr. Football, I got to be able to make the argument that he's the best player in the class. That is a very high bar to clear. So that doesn't mean, hey, my team's best player may not be a Mr. Football caliber player. Now, that doesn't mean he's not a great football player. We're talking best in the class. This is an elite company, a one of one. Your grandbaby has 500 rushing yards. I don't really care on a Mr. Football level, okay? So I want to get that at the outset because there's going to be lots of names out there who are really solid players who we don't talk about right now in this segment. And it's not that they're not really good players. We're talking the best of the best in their classification. So while it's a loaded list, it's probably not as long of a list as some people out there may have or want us to have.
Well, we'll start kind of in our lowest classification, work our way up, and we start with our only player that we have in this 1A classification, which is Nate Adams at Clay County. He has been having a tremendous year through 7 games, passing the football. He's 111 for 194, completion percentage of 57% for 1,668 yards and 21 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions.
Crazy.
238 yards per game, 3 touchdowns per game through the air, and again, only 4 interceptions for as much as they throw the football. Don't forget, he plays defense, 21 tackles, 6 interceptions, 3 of those have gone back for touchdowns.
Leads in every passing category in the history of Clay County football. Pretty decent history.
30 interceptions as well.
Unbelievable. On the defensive side of the ball, he's a pick-6 artist. I will say in single A, I think Bryson Grisham was on a pace in Gordonsville to be in this conversation. Unfortunately, he's been out injured for the past couple of weeks. You miss a couple of games, probably it when it comes to the Mr. Football Award in particular. Listen, Nate Adams is really freaking good. I just said I think this team has a chance to go to the state championship game. I very much believe that, and that is in no small part because of Nate Adams. His ability to throw the football down the field, to execute this offense at a high level. But you cannot underestimate. He erases half the field on defense. I mean, back in the day, talking about Revis Island, I mean, it is Adams Island out there. You cannot throw it there. And I honestly think he only has 6 interceptions because teams just are refusing to throw the football on that side of the field. And remember, we're talking about single A football. Mm-hmm. They ain't throwing the football
throw the football very much.
And he has a pick a game.
Yeah, other than them in Gordonsville.
Correct. And they haven't played Gordonsville yet. He completely neutralizes half a field on defense. And then you talk about his numbers on offense. Those are great season stats. And they're what? 7 games into the season. They have 3 regular season games left. So he's going to cruise past 2,000 passing yards, several hundred rushing yards to go along with it. The touchdowns, he's going to be in the 30 range. I mean, if this isn't a Mr. Football candidate, I don't know what it is. He's absolutely in the discussion there for the Bulldogs.
So that's our only 1A. We don't have any in 2A. Obviously, we don't have any teams in 3A. In 4A, we've got quite a few guys.
Yeah, and Chris with a good comment. He says, Mr. Football should be decided by more than just stats. It should be about character, leadership, and gameplay. Here's the deal. So I actually believe it probably should just be an on-the-field award. Because you and I both know this. Every kid's a great kid.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't.
Nobody's going to say, like, this kid, oh, by the way, he's not a good kid. Like, I think that you've got to keep it very objective here. And so while I agree with the sentiment of we got to take character and all that stuff. Now, if you want to take GPA in, I'm cool, right? You say you got to have a 3.5 or a 3.0 GPA or whatever. That's objective, right? You got to be doing well in classes. Character gets really shady when we talk about high school kids because everybody's a great kid. Or, on the other hand, right, you got a kid from a not great background who's doing his best to make it, and you're going to take away an award because of something that happened maybe 5 years ago. I just think that's a tough one to walk down. So I actually feel like this should be a 99% on the field
just
award.
Football.
Again, I agree with the sentiment, but I think you got to walk that thin line when we're talking about high school kids.
Well, all right, let's talk about all the players that we have from Region 4 4A because we have 6 of them.
They're not all going to make it.
Obviously not, but their numbers are ridiculous. We'll just kind of work our way down. The first team is Upperman. 2 guys from Upperman. Bronston Chaffin, the quarterback, 77% completion percentage for 933 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He's rushing the ball 63 times for just under 500 yards at 7.9 yards per carry and 9 touchdowns. All-purpose yardage of over 1,400 yards and 22 total touchdowns. He's only played in 1 second half. Ethan Polk, their running back, 94 carries, 733 yards, pretty much the same yards per carry and 13 touchdowns. Defensively, these are only in 5 games, 18 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble. The numbers are ridiculous.
Yeah, Bronston should win it.
Yeah.
And
Polk, again, also not playing in the second half.
Bronston should win it. He's the best player on the best team in the class, and I think he's the best player in the class. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, can throw it 60 yards. And, by the way, I got a big beef to take with our friends in Greenville. Okay, they're up 49-0, or maybe 42-0, one of the two, at halftime last week. And their starters are in the game, chucking deep bombs to go up 63-0 on the last play of the third quarter. Now, this is where you got to have a little bit of, to go the other way, you got to have a little bit of wherewithal on the stats. Because that's crazy. Okay, that's nonsense. This isn't like Malachi Dow a couple years ago who should have won it. Got hosed, which is why I don't vote anymore. Got hosed. Where he's getting stats in big games and in where they have to have it. Come on now. So, you see a Greenville player later in the year.
Yeah, none of these dudes are doing that.
No, you're not getting on the ballot because they're out at halftime every week.
Yeah.
Bronson should win it. And I don't know what will happen. Again, the process is crazy to me. But he's the best player. Now, that's not to say any of these other kids shouldn't be on the stage, and if they win it, I'm going to be upset. I'm certainly not. I just really believe he's the best player. I think he's the most dominant force. He's the Brock Lesnar of our area. He's a beast. Now, on the other hand, Ethan Polk's impact on defense, I think, can't be overstated, especially the last couple of weeks. When they've missed Walter Kane in that linebacker core, those linebackers have not missed a beat. And that's 2 young kids. That's Colton Johnson, who's been great, and Jude Fitzpatrick, who's been great. But 2 young kids next to a senior linebacker out there, those 2 are the engine that makes this football team go. And Baxter, an engine that's trying to get back and finish 1 game better than they were last year. But this 4A class is loaded over here.
Polk also did not play defensively in that first game down in Fayetteville. Our next guy up, Trip Pinion from White County. Can't go without Mr. Football without mentioning Trip Pinion. 59% completion percentage for 720 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. He's rushing the ball for 9.8 yards per carry, 951 yards already on the season, and 10 touchdowns, an all-purpose yardage of 1,671 yards and 20 touchdowns overall.
Yeah, so obviously, hopefully Trip Pinion gets back
and
healthy.
Did not play last week.
Hopefully he gets back healthy and he plays. You can get away with missing 1, as we talked about earlier. If you miss a couple, you're probably going to be out when it comes
missed
to
half
Mr.
of the
Football.
Cumberland County game.
He wasn't going to play in the second half of that Cumberland County game either. If he had stayed in, it would have been a lot.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe not. Cumberland nearly beat the Cab last week. But still, my only hope with Trip is that the emphasis on passing earlier in the year doesn't hurt his Mr. Football stats, because his passing stats are not going to be eye-catching on the statewide level, and they did do a ton of that the first 3 weeks of the season. Now, is he a Mr. Football caliber player? Without question. Yeah, you do the thought experiment that we do all the time. Take him off the team. Where are they? Trip Pinion. I mean, he is the cog that makes that White County football team roll. We saw it on offense, and they had a great game plan against CAK to get the win, but certainly a lot less explosive without Trip Pinion there. You talk about what this award is supposed to embody. Trip Pinion certainly fits the mold there in Sparta.
Maddox Akendo from Stone Memorial is another guy that we're looking at. His rushing stats are insane. 1,094 yards at 9.8 yards per carry and 9 touchdowns. He's also got 24 receptions for 355 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, all-purpose, 1,449 and 12 touchdowns as a skill player.
Yeah, his versatility is really what kind of separates him. And those rushing stats are crazy when you consider he's not out there typically getting 30 carries a game.
They've got a passing quarterback.
Yeah, without question. and they are a multiple pro-style offense. I mean, they will spread it out, go up-tempo.
Yep.
So his rushing stats are really bonkers. Of course, he had that unbelievable 2-game stretch where they needed him. I mean, that game against DeKalb, remember Hurricane Helene, they had to have him be as great as he was, and he was for 294 yards. Against a really good Meigs County team on the road, he goes for 303 to win that, really put the team on his back as Stone got those 2 huge wins. That game over DeKalb probably looks like it's going to put them into the playoffs. Again, you do that thought, take him off this football team, what are they? I don't think Stone Memorial has the same record they have right now without Maddox Akendo, and some of those games were certainly not as competitive without Maddox Akendo.
These final 2 players, they play for the same team, and they're twins. Zach and Gabe Borders. I mean, I thought about putting these numbers together and kind of treating them like one player, just because the numbers themselves are so ridiculous. But we'll start with Zach Borders, because his numbers, and again, it's been great that he's been healthy this season for a full season, because we're getting to see what a type of player he has been already this year. 855 yards rushing the football for 9.7 yards per carry and 11 touchdowns. He's got 9 catches for 181 yards and a touchdown as well, so all-purpose just over 1,012 total touchdowns. Defensively, 13 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, 2 fumble recoveries, and 1 interception. For Gabe Borders, his twin brother, 59 carries for 649 yards. He's averaging 11 yards per carry and 12 touchdowns. He's got 11 receptions for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he just returned a punt last week for a touchdown. 785 all-purpose, 15 total touchdowns. Defensively, 3 blocked kicks, 1 interception, 22 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a pass breakup.
Yeah, and this is going to be really interesting because Gabe is really kind of the heir apparent to this award. He's been a finalist the last 2 years. He's into his senior season. On paper, you say he's going to win it. But Zach's health, being back, he's kind of been the bell cow back. They've done a lot of him at back, and then with Gabe at wide receiver, then they haven't done a ton of wing T here recently, but when they do, they're both on the wing. So I don't know, and I hope this isn't a scenario where, and I'm afraid it may be, where the stats are so split between the two of them that you can't really choose, and that may bounce them out from being able to get to, being a finalist for this award. But they're both really good, and they are twins, and they play really similarly, so you can kind of take your pick of which one you wanted. But the stats speak for themselves. They're both elite when on the football field on Friday night.
Now, obviously, there are other guys out there that are having tremendous seasons, but as of right now, these are guys that we would consider maybe nominating for the Mr. Football in either 4A or in 1A. And once again, it's Nate Adams in 1A. We've got 6 guys that are contenders here in 4A, all in Region 4, obviously. Those are all of our teams. But Bronston Chaffin, Ethan Polk, both from Upperman, Trip Pinion from White County, Maddox Akendo from Stone Memorial, and Zach and Gabe Borders from Macon County.
And I look at this and say, the last 2 games of the season for most of these teams are going to be really important when it comes to how people vote here. Yeah. Right? I think we all feel like Nate Adams is absolutely going to get a vote. Bronston Chaffin is absolutely going to get a vote. That Macon County Stone Memorial game, who balls out?
Who you vote
who
for.
balls out?
Yeah.
Right? Trip Pinion, if he comes back and plays the last 2 games, pretty safe to say he's going to get a vote. But if he doesn't play, does that open up a spot for somebody else? So this is not established. These are contenders right now. This is not, hey, it's who's got it. And that also gives somebody else some time to just light the world on fire the last 2 games, right? Player who leaps in your mind. Blake Owen, right? Blake Owen's stats, getting into that area. Can they win this week and then next week? Can Blake Owen go and lead his football team on the road against a currently undefeated Green Hill team? If he does, he's now going to be in that discussion and probably get a vote. So it's not set in stone. If we didn't mention you, you're definitely not going to be a person that we say could win Mr. Football. So save your emails for now. You have a chance for that in a few weeks. But it speaks to the loaded talent that we have in our area, that we have 7 kids that we can list off and say could all be in the Mr. Football conversation.
And could very easily go a little bit more
Yeah.
as well. All right, well, that's what we got for who we think are some Mr. Football contenders coming up in a few weeks. Let's get into some of the games. Let's start with the Smith County one in Jackson County from last week. Smith County wins it 35-14, tied 7-7 at halftime, and the Owls able to pull away in the second half. They're now third in Region 2-2A at 2-1, and that is the only important record that they have next to their name is that 2-1. They only have 2 region games remaining. This week at Westmoreland is the big one.
Yeah, perfect week for the bye week. Just perfect week for the off week for Smith County because you build the momentum. Now you know you can do it. Right now you know, okay, you are 2-1 in the region. You have an ability, and they were not uncompetitive against East Robertson, right? So they got to go back to the drawing board, get a really good game plan together, have an extra week if you're the coaching staff.
They get Westmoreland this week. Their bye's next week.
Oh, you're right. My apologies. I'm tripping. Lost my mind. But huge opportunity for Smith County against Westmoreland. Now offensively, Westmoreland's a little bit limited. Now they did put 50+ up on Jackson County, so they've shown explosiveness. But you think about the East Robertson game, 7-6. They are elite on defense. And what that tells me here is Smith County's got to put their hard hat on and be ready for a rock fight. They got to break out that blue-collar savage mentality that Coach Dyer talked about last year. They got to have that in this one. And if they can win this football game. And you win this football game, the season's shook on its head. I'm telling you, if they beat Westmoreland, the season entirely changes for Smith County.
Obviously, a huge win for Smith County last week. And for Jackson County, they're still 5-3 on the year. They get there by this week and a chance to regroup and get ready for those final 2 weeks of the year. Absolutely still not out of it. And
gotta win.
Yeah. They
gotta win.
Somebody's going to be left out over these last few games, and they got to get a win over these last couple of weeks. Macon County dominates Livingston Academy 45-6 in the first half. Their first 5 offensive drives, all less than 5 plays, all touchdowns. Defense did not allow a Wildcats first down in the first half. They also returned a punt in there as well. That was their 6th touchdown of the first half. For Livingston Academy, they're so injury depleted right now. No Adrian Jenkins at quarterback. Rocco Carwile, one of their skill players, was out. Matthew Slayton was warming up. He got hurt in warm-ups, one of their big offensive linemen. They just can't get away from the injuries right now. And Macon County did what they do, and they looked really, really good.
Yeah, and they got an ability to get a really rolling here for Macon County. They get the off week, then they turn around, they get Watertown, and then they get Stone Memorial. That's going to be a big one. We already kind of hit on the implications that are kind of looming in that game. If Sparta goes out and beats DeKalb County next week, that game between Macon and Stone is going to be for the 3 or the 4. So really interesting how this is shaping out for Macon County, but they have the ability to just be rolling into that Stone Memorial game. And if they get through that, then to be rolling, and this region is going to decimate the other region.
Yes.
It's going. God bless Loudon.
We think Loudon's an okay team.
I think
but the
decent,
other 3,
and they have played nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
So all the records are really good.
Mm-hmm.
For reference, Signal Mountain had 2 losses entering that game last week against Silverdale, who White County waxed the first game of the season. And Silverdale beat them like a drum. They don't play anybody over there. So Region 4-4A, I will stick my flag in the ground 3-4 and probably 4-4. Going to sweep that other region, which makes it very interesting come second round of the playoffs. But regardless, it's a Macon County team that's now all of a sudden has put, 6 good quarters together. That starting halfway through the third quarter against DeKalb County, and they rolled through this last week. They're going to roll through Watertown. You like that at this point in the season for a Kyle Shoulders who said they've got to figure out how to put their 4 best quarters together over and over and over again.
From 6 minutes to go in that third quarter against DeKalb County until halftime against Livingston Academy, they scored 77 unanswered points.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
so that's
77-0.
That is less than a full game.
Yeah. 3.5 quarters. It was pretty good. So big win for Macon County. They're on a bye. Livingston Academy also on a bye this week. White County, they go on the road to beat CAK 28-7 without Trip Pinion. Cole Sims started at quarterback. He ended up getting hurt as well. Hopefully he's okay and ready to go for the end of this season. But a big road win defensively. We said it. They're going to have to hold their hats defensively. Only gave up 7 points, and the offense just kind of kept chugging along as the game went on, and they were able to do enough.
Yeah, and Sparta was the bigger football team in this game. game, which they were able to lean on CAK, kind of churn down the field, doing some different stuff. Isaiah Kelso got a little run at quarterback. Tucker Pinion got in there a little bit at quarterback. Cole Sims, you mentioned it, he got in there. So they've got enough dudes in there that can mix it up. Now, how sustainable is that down the stretch now? I think they're going to be fine, obviously, into the off week. We'll see about DeKalb. They'll be fine probably against that beat-up Livingston team and into the first round of the playoffs. So you've got some runway here, I think, to lean Trip Pinion back in. And I don't know the extent of this injury. I have no clue. You need him against DeKalb County. If you can beat that, then you can kind of relax a little bit.
Because then your seeding doesn't change.
Correct. You can relax a little bit and get through into the first round of the playoffs and then ramp him back up. So very interesting to see how that goes, but a great approach to the ball game for the coaching staff and well executed by the players.
And again, even if he doesn't play against DeKalb County, and say they lose, if they beat Livingston, they're still the 2 because they have the tiebreaker against both Macon County and Stone Memorial. So it doesn't they only need a win against either DeKalb or Livingston Academy. So they kind of have some scenarios that they can play with in those final 2 games of the year. The game that you did, York Institute beat Stone Memorial 27-21 in a really good football game. York Institute goes up a couple of scores, and then here comes Stone Memorial. They tie it up 21 apiece, and then York goes right back down the field. They score to go up 27-21, and there were still 8 minutes to go in the game, and York's defense was able to take a stand for the rest of the game.
Yeah, York said, we're going to run through your face over and over and over again, and they did. I mean, they loaded up the box, and you know what was really interesting in that game is they were doing the single wing stuff, and then all of a sudden, they stayed in it, and then there was one drive in the third quarter where Nathaniel Tipton just started firing little dots down the seam. And then he one-on-one deep on the outside, and they caught it. And it was just one drive. But it was so interesting to see because it's on tape, and you just make your opponent have to respect that, where you can't run commit every play and send everybody towards the line of scrimmage because they said, hey, you do that, we can just real quick fire it over to the top. I hit a Tebow near jump pass at one point in the game. So we've talked so much about if you're going to be a run-heavy football team, right? We talked about it with Cookeville. You have to be multiple in that run game. Brandon, welcome to the scene. Only had about 100 yards entering the game. I think he had more than that in the game.
153 and 2 scores.
And he broke free on the first drive, and then he got the backbreaker late as well. So Blake Voles in there. He was rumbling through for a couple of touchdowns as well. And Stone, I thought, played pretty well. You know, it wasn't a game where I thought Stone wasn't ready to play. I thought they were. I thought York just went out and flat out won the football game.
What I think is really impressive about this win for the Dragons, you had Cole Brandon run for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Blake Voiles also 2 touchdowns and 71 yards. Logan Pinnell didn't need to do what he's been doing all season long. He's been averaging 110 yards and about 2 or 3 touchdowns a game. They didn't have to do it in this one.
Yeah, they largely held Logan Pinnell in check. He didn't really get loose, and it didn't matter. They just had enough weapons there to keep chugging along. They played really good defense. They were able to they had a ton of respect, clearly, for Maddox Akendo. You know, Noah Potter, again, showing off his arm strength. Caden Page had a great touchdown catch in the game. Potter being able to kind of stretch plays off script, roll way out to his right, and find Hunter Haney in the end zone for a touchdown as they got back into the game. But ultimately, what are 99% of football games won? In the trenches. And York won that football game in the trenches. And I said this on the End Zone show, and I still believe it. This is going to be a matchup thing for Stone. If you are big up front and can kind of lean on them, you're going to have a good chance. If you're not, Stone's probably going to beat you. And I think that's what you've seen throughout this season so far for Stone Memorial.
So those were our 3 broadcast games last week. Let's talk about our 3 broadcast games coming up this week. The Upperman Bees back in action, 7-0, 4-0 in region play, hosting White House, who is 4-3 and 3-2. This game will be on UCR 3 with myself and Coach Shanks, presented by Gentry's Power Equipment. The Bees coming off of a win before the bye week against Smith County, 43-13, a game that they led 43-0 at halftime. Starting defense has not allowed a score this season, the exception of course, that Macon County game. Offensively, they have not scored less than 35 in a game, and it was in that Macon County game that they scored 35 points. They have an average margin of victory of 32 points per game. Now, the Bees played White House last season out of the bye, and they won it 28-14, but it was very slow to get to that 28-14 victory. I watched White House's game against Station Camp. The Bees are going to win this game by a lot.
So, here's the thing. If you're an Upperman player, turn it off.
Yeah, don't listen.
Turn it off right now. For everybody else, So this has been the bugaboo spot for Upperman for years. Out for the bye week. Off the off week, it's just been – now they win, but because they kind of always do. But it's just been the spot where –
it's weird.
It's been
and
weird.
especially for Putnam County because they're off for 2 weeks.
Correct. Now, that being said, they're going to win by 1,000.
Yes.
So this is another spot, right? We've said it all season. Fayetteville game last year, pretty lopsided. This year, more lopsided. Lebanon game last year, fairly lopsided. More lopsided this year. Smith County game last year, 14-0, lopsided this year. This is another one. It's going to be more lopsided this year. They're better than they were a year ago.
Yeah.
And by the way, I know this person who I'm not going to name, but he's going to watch, hates Upperman. And I don't know the story. I don't know this guy. Hates him. They do not have a bad schedule. They are just better than everybody else.
Yeah.
And you can hate it if you want to. I really don't care. I'm going to tell you like it is. They are better than everybody else in this class, in this state. They just are. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be beaten.
Correct.
And I'm not saying
Correct.
that, right? I want to be very clear. I'm not saying they're unbeatable and no one's going to beat them and all that. That's not what I'm saying. But on a pound-for-pound basis, they are the best team in this class.
You can't say their schedule's bad.
You can't.
That's all it boils
You can't.
down to.
It doesn't matter. Like, I called them beating Sparta 49-7, and Sparta's going to make the second round at least of the playoffs, okay? Like, you can't say it. If you are saying this is not a good football team, you are purely a hater. That is your only reason. So, yes, this has been a weird spot. Maybe they don't score on the first drive of the game, Jacob, but they're going to win by as many points as they want to win by. And let's be clear, they could do what Greenville's doing. And leave the starters in there and beat teams 125-0 if they wanted to. They're not doing that because that puts your players at risk and it accomplishes nothing. I will say this. At one point, if over the last 3 games of the season they continue to do what they've done, which is be at running clocks at halftime, it will not surprise me if they give the starters some run into the third quarter from a conditioning standpoint of here's what we got to do at halftime, go back out. So don't be surprised if maybe it's this one and it ends up getting into the 60s because they could do that. Without question. They haven't done it. It's not a classy thing to do on a weekly basis, certain team. You're not accomplishing much other than that conditioning. So it won't surprise me if they do that at some point. They're going to have an opportunity to do it this week because they're going to win by 1,000.
Yeah, White House 4-3 on the year. They just lost to Station Camp 38-8. Station Camp, that was only their second win of the season. Their one win before that was Greenbrier.
Now, Station Camp's schedule is nuts.
It is.
They nearly beat Pearl Cone. Now, Pearl's not as great as they were a year ago. They're still very good. They may be the opponent in the state championship game for anybody who comes out of this side. But Station Camp is going to win a lot of games down the stretch here.
Yeah. But
doesn't matter. Upperman's going to win by a lot.
That to say, White House did not look very good in that first half. I got the Bees winning 42-7. And that's assuming they take out the starters in the
teams
second
keep
half.
scoring on the JV. So maybe it's
that's where
13,
the seven's coming
so
from.
I'll say 56-13.
30.
It's going to be 42-0.
If they score,
it's
I'll
going to
say
be
this.
42-0.
I'll
The
say
starters
this.
will come out.
If they score 56, the other team will not score because the starters will be in longer.
You're probably right. Okay, 49-13.
There you go. That game will be on UCR 3. Coach Shanks and myself will have the call of that.
Listen, and by the way, people ask like, why are the Upperman games not the game of the week? Because they're winning by 1,000. I want to go to watch it. Good, like it's good for Upperman.
Yeah,
but like you get to go home early on Friday. But I'm not. Like, I'm trying to go to the best, most competitive game. I promise you. You will hear me a lot in Baxter in the postseason.
Yes.
I can assure you of that. And some other people that you love to hate. It'll be fun.
York Institute 5-2, 3-0 in region play, hosting the Friendship Christian School 5-2, 2-0 in region play. This game will be on UCR 2 with Rafferty Cleary, JoJo Matheny. It's presented by Beatty Lumber and Birdie's Lounge. And York Institute, obviously, coming off a big win. They've now won 5 games in a row. And
hang on.
I figured you wanted to.
Sean. Okay, I'm not calling this player out. I just want to be clear. Zayden Anderson. Heck of a receiver. Caught 2 touchdowns last year in the semifinal. He caught a touchdown on the last play of the third quarter last week to make it 63-0. The equivalent of that is Branson Turnbow catching a touchdown to go up 63-0 on the last play of the third quarter. I did the game last year. You know this. I watch every game. They leave their starters into the fourth quarter. Every game. Okay? with love, signed yours truly. I'm right. Continue.
York Institute, 5 wins in a row. Of course, beat Stone Memorial
They
last
come in
week.
the fourth quarter. Sorry, go ahead.
27-21. The Dragons, I mentioned it, 5 wins after the bye week and got their strongest win of the season against Stone Memorial. Friendship Christian School, they beat PCA 2 weeks ago, 52-51. This game was 38-36 at halftime. And I'm going to go through some of these numbers because these numbers are ridiculous. Excuse me, FCS has a running back. His name is Carlando Barton.
Barton. It's my favorite first name of the year.
It's tremendous.
Love it.
Lando, however you want to pronounce it.
Love it.
1 game, this singular game, 343 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns on 34 carries. All of those were season highs. He has 17 touchdowns on the ground this season. He is 5'9" and 225 yards. He plays nose guard defensively, and he's the running back.
I love it.
He's a good player. And all that to say,
beast.
This is going to be a good test for York's defensive line.
And you know, those kind of low center of gravity power backs are tough to bring down, right? They find ways to churn yards for 4, 5, 6 yards. Now, I do like the matchup from the perspective of that's the kind of, team that York's probably built to slow down. But much like last year, I think this is a great game for York to play. Just like last week was for Stone Memorial. Now they're feeling really good. Now you got to put your hard hat on and come to work because they're going to beat Wartburg by 575 points next week. So, but this is a good test for them to get in before they get into the postseason. Because here's why. If York makes the 4th round and it's Westmoreland, you've got to be ready for these power running teams. You got to be ready for these teams that are going to run the football really effectively with a mix of good backs. Now, the best back for Westmoreland, totally different kind of player. That he's, taller. He's over 6 feet tall, more speed to him. But still, good to see good running backs throughout this season. They did last week with a Kendo. Now you see kind of a smaller, stocky back this week in Barton. So I love this matchup for York. Win or lose, I think this is a net positive for York to play this game. And don't forget, this is going to be a Friendship Christian team out for revenge after what happened last year. The way York beat them on a faked extra point, they're going to be hungry to win this football game.
And it was 8-7. They had a chance to tie it up. And then I think it was in the 3rd quarter when they scored. It wasn't like it was at the end of the game. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. And they run a fake PAT and run it in for a 2-point conversion to go up by 1.
And it wasn't like a broken play.
No.
Coach Wright said after the game on the end zone show, he said, we found something on tape we liked, and we went after it. Hallmark of a great football coach. And I told him this on Friday. What a job he's doing with this team. You consider what they lost off of these last 2 years, 2 teams that went to back-to-back semifinals, another team that is egregiously not ranked, and I've said my piece about that too. They're going to be in the semifinals. They're going to be in the semifinals, which means there's 4 left. 10 teams, 4 left. Bledsoe County's ranked. Carry the 2.
Somehow.
Carry the 2. They beat Bledsoe. What do I know? Regardless, great opponent. Now, I do want to see Logan Pinnell get it back rolling here. Now, it's great. It is objectively great the more weapons have been added into this offense, but Logan Pinnell is going to be the back that carries them to the promised land this year. So an opportunity for him to get it back rolling. As Cam said, he's with our friends at 615 Preps, so they've got a good look in at Friendship Christian right there in their backyard. They do a cool show on tomorrow night. You feel free to watch it on their Facebook page. This is a really good matchup stylistically for York to face a different sort of an offense than what they've been facing so far in 2A. And for a while, we thought this one could have been the game of the week. This Cookeville-Lincoln County game, a 6A game, kind of trumped it a little bit. And we saw York last week, obviously. This has the makings of a really good rock fight.
I mentioned it 8-7 last year, and obviously very different team in York this year. I think York's multiplicity offensively with just the guys that they can use. Logan Pinnell has been their lead back all season long, and then last week it was Cole Brannon. Blake Voiles has been kind of their second guy, and Tipton, he'll throw it around a couple of times as well. Really good test for the Dragons on UCR2 this week. Who are you going with in this one?
Yeah, I love the way York's playing right now. I think on both sides of the football, they passed the eye test for me last week. Stone got some stuff through the air, but it was nothing like what we saw week 1 and 2 with Clay County and Grace Christian. Grace Christian is rolling, by the way. I love the way they defend the run against Akendo and company last week. They defended it really well. Kendo's going to get his because he's a Mr. Football caliber player. I think York's playing good enough ball. They get home field in the Dragon Pit. I'll take York to win this one in a close ball game. Give me the Dragons, let's say 27-21.
That's pretty close to mine. I said 27-24.
Okay.
I think FCS kicks a field goal early on in the game at some point.
I love you calling the shot on that. Like, that's specific.
You gotta get there somehow.
And they just brought some food by here.
It smells really good.
On the rooftop of Fire and Vine. Love it. Love it.
All right, let's talk about the high school football game of the week. The Cookeville Cavaliers at 6-1, 3-1 in region play, hosting Lincoln County, who is also 6-1. They're 4-0 in region play. This game will be on UCR, Facebook, YouTube. Noah McKay, Jeremy Tollison, Hallie Ledbetter. Both of these teams coming off of a bye, and it's presented by 931 Sports Cards and Collectibles and the CHS Chain Gang. Cookeville coming off of their win 2 weeks ago. They beat Gallatin 45-29 before the bye. That game was tied 14-14 at halftime. Lincoln County 2 weeks ago, they beat Franklin County 49-6. Only loss this season for the Falcons is against Davidson Academy, a private school who is 3-5 on the year, but that was in week 2. It was 34-27, and you said you watched it. Kind of a crazy game, fumbles everywhere, penalties, and
high
the
scoring.
scores.
And if you see through most of Lincoln County's games, they've had a lot of scoring. Their opponents haven't. Penalties, fumbles, kickoff returns. Just a lot of weird stuff in that game. It very much felt like a week 2 game. I'll tell you, last year's game, 41-13 Cookeville. This is not last year's game. This Lincoln County team has changed some things, and I'll be interested as I get further into my research this week on what's changed for them. But if you turn on the tape and you just blared out the logos and everything and you didn't know any better, you'd almost think you were watching a Cookeville game. I mean, we're going to be done at 7:45 on Friday night. This is going to be 600 combined rushing yards, 55 carries for each team, run the football, old school type of game. So if you like that, which I do, you're going to have fun with Jeremy, Hallie, and I on Friday night because it's going to be that sort of a ball game. I mean, ground and pound, got a good quarterback, much like Cookeville, that likes to run the ball a lot. They do a lot of direct snap stuff to their running back. But Lincoln County, they're going to run left, they're going to run right, they'll take a shot every once in a while, and then they're going to run down your throat again. I mean, that is the kind of game they want to be in.
Sounds like Cookeville.
And I'm super curious in this one because on the film, Lincoln County looks pretty big. And that's been kind of the advantage for Cookeville, is big up front. I do think this is an important spot for Cookeville. It's kind of one of these old school rivalries, used to be a region rivalry. They can't afford a letdown here before the single biggest game of their season, which is next week at Green Hill. They win at Green Hill. They put themselves in the driver's seat for the 2 seed. They've got to have the 2 seed with the way the Murfreesboro region is shaped out this year.
And who knows if Green Hill ends up beating Mount Juliet after that.
They really need the 1 seed.
Yeah.
But they've got to have the 2 seed. And you're right. If Green Hill goes and beats Mount Juliet, Cookeville has a path to a 3-way tie.
Yep.
And they're going to have a 9-1 overall record if they find a way to beat Green Hill coming up and obviously getting through Lincoln County on Friday night. So they can't afford a letdown here. And I'm super curious because Cookeville really hasn't faced the kind of offense that they're going to face.
Similar to them.
You know, Sparta has kind of turned into that. But at the time, Sparta was trying to air it out, and you got that shootout game. So how does Cookeville bow up? Now, I think you could certainly look at this if you've got Cookeville-colored glasses on and say, hey, Cookeville's a little bit better at all this stuff. And that may be true, but we're going to find out on Friday, and I think it's going to be a really great clash of similar styles.
A player that I'm also looking forward to is Thomas Johnson, maybe a little bit closer to 100% in this game. He played in that Gallatin game. I think he was on a snap count in that game, but they need him, and especially in the secondary. Obviously, they need his offense because it just gives you another back who is a very, very physical back, but they've been able to kind of fill his spots with a couple of guys. Blake Barrett has been thrown in there. Evan Banks has been thrown in there. So they've got some guys that can fill in for him. You would love to have him, but you really need him defensively at the top of that defense in the secondary. He can go out there. He can make plays, and he's obviously got a lot of speed as well.
Yeah, defensively they need him. Offensively they need him. And how about the guts of him to play in that Gallatin game? Banged up, gets in there, is just a gritty football player.
Throwing offense at Gallatin,
given his all. They needed him in that game, and he goes out there and guts it out. Hopefully this off week has helped him get healthy because you're right. He's a key cog of this football team. I mean, you talk about it and you go, you know, Blake Owens certainly, and then right there, Thomas Johnson and players that Cookeville needs out there. So still, though, we're going to find out how healthy he is because if he's not 100%, you're not going to run Thomas Johnson till the wheels fall off.
Sure.
Knowing what's
especially
looming,
in non-region. Yeah.
Knowing what's looming next week. But if he's out there carrying the football like we've seen him do early in the season, that bodes very well for the Cavs moving forward.
Who are you going with?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun football game. I think it's going to be a quick football game. I say this and watch them both come out here and throw 30 times.
Well, you're on the call, so.
That's the running thing, is I had the latest games of the night. I will say I do think Cookeville wins the game. I think it's going to be a pretty fun one, though. I got Cookeville winning 28-21.
I went a little higher scoring originally until I heard what you had to say. I hadn't seen any film. I looked at their stats. Hadn't seen any film. I'm going to go a little bit closer than what I originally put. I'm still going to go Cookeville. I'm going to go 35-21.
And I'll say this for Lincoln County. You know, their schedule has not been the best thing in the world. It hasn't. Cookeville's really hadn't either. I mean, Sparta's a good football team. Mount Juliet, they got beat by Mount Juliet. Other than that, you know, Stone's a competitive team, but week one, and that just, you know, we talked about the matchup not being very favorable for Stone. So it's not Cookeville hadn't faced the most brutal schedule in the world. So I don't think you can just say Cookeville definitely wins because they faced the harder schedule. I do think you get beneath the surface, this has the makings of a pretty good one. It's why it's the game of the week. We don't want to make a habit of picking bad games for the game of the week. So I think it should be a fun one, but I do think it's one that Cookeville can come out of the off week a little bit rested, lean on that big offensive front, turn away, and start to pull away late and win this football game.
Once again, our broadcast games this week, the high school football game of the week, Cookeville hosting Lincoln County on UCR. On UCR 2, York Institute hosts Friendship Christian School, and on UCR 3, Upperman gets White House. Tune into the games. We'll have UC Game Day morning at some point this week.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I will challenge. I'm going to challenge Cookeville fan base.
Oh, buddy.
They've been coming to the games.
They've been packed.
I know. I'm not challenging on that. They've been coming to the game, so you got to do that. But, like, when we do the game of the week and it's Cookeville, and Upperman's on UCR 3, Upperman's had more views. And Upperman's packed too. So you're going to have to call somebody who's not at the game. We want you to go to the game. Don't stay home to watch. Go to the game. But then you got to, like, get people tuning in, because that makes me not want to bring the game of the week to Cookeville. Is it working? I'm giving a little bulletin. I'm trying to get people fired up here. Like, you got to call somebody and tell them to watch, because, like, we'll go live on UCR 3 with Upperman. It'll be 400 devices,
no, listen,
3 minutes in.
You can go see how many people are tuned in.
And so people ask, where we at? Come on, Cab Nation. It's the third biggest enrollment in the state. Where you at? Come on, tune in. Go to the game, tune in, enjoy. The End Zone Show is going to be fun as well.
Yeah, the End Zone Show will have it after that as well. So that's what we have coming up this week. A lot of good games coming up this week as well in terms of broadcast games. And then we'll recap all the action on the End Zone Show a little later on. Next week, full slate of games. We're back into it. 2 more weeks of the regular season after this week, weeks 9, 10, and 11. And it is going to be fun. Those final 2 weeks of the year, always a lot of fun across the Upper Cumberland. A lot of region implications, a lot of non-region games this week, but some fun and interesting ones this week as well. Tune into the games, go out to the games. It's going to be a little bit warmer coming up on Friday. Not quite as cold as it is today. And then here in the next couple of days, it's going to be chilly at night. So make sure you dress warm and bring your blankets, whatever you want. But it's still going to be pretty fun. Appreciate you tuning in for the Tuesday Night Football Show. Before we go, of course, we got to let you know of our all-inclusive sponsors and appreciate them for making everything that we do here at UCR possible. Swallows Insurance, Hall Family Pharmacy, and Hall Sports and Outdoors. The Crouch Team with Highlands Elite Real Estate. This show is presented by Fire and Vine. We're right here at Fire and Vine. Nelson Trophy and Screen Printing, Domino's, The Quality Family, Watson Chevy, Club Wyndham, Sonia Brown with American Way Real Estate, Tee Up in Baxter, The Real Estate Collective, and Amonette's Eagle Auction.
Absolutely. Update, volleyball. Smith County upsets Gordonsville in 4 sets to clinch a sub-state berth.
How about that? Gordonsville beat them twice in the regular season.
They did. Smith County wins it in the postseason at East Robertson. Goose is there tonight. Coverage coming to UpperCumberlandReporter.com. I think York is in action next there in that region tournament. So Smith County going to sub-state, 1 step away from the state tournament. How about that cross-county rivalry? By the way, in football next year, that's going to be a region game. Smith County, Gordonsville. That's going to be awesome. And we've got to end the show with this. Go Vols. I hate Alabama so much. I hate them. We're rushing the field again, and we're taking the uprights with us. Go Vols.
Go Hoosiers. Get Nebraska. Staying undefeated.
Go Vols.
Appreciate you tuning in. This is